You don't have to think about the how it's going to happen. All you need to do is make the decision. As soon as you make the decision, all the resources or whatever kind of shows up, because you start to just be like, wow, I just made a decision on something pretty big. That means I'm doing it. And however that comes about, it will work itself out. Everything always shows up as it needs to.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of Power Purpose Play. We are a global platform which is dedicated to advancing the personal growth and inner power of women in midlife. We are so grateful that you're here, spending time in your own personal growth. Our goal is to help you rediscover yourself as you move forward in the next chapter of your life. To that end, I interview incredible women every week who will serve as inspiration for you and who will give you an example and advice on how to face the obstacles in your way and take that first step towards rediscovery. This week is no exception in that I'm very pleased to speak today with Lisa Kelly. Lisa is a mentor in the art of living your dreams. She finds joy in inspiring others to find the courage to make the inner changes necessary for external transformation. She loves teaching people to see how powerful they truly are, harness their infinite potential, and say yes to an extraordinary life. So welcome to the show, Lisa. I'm really pleased to have you here. And I love that mentor in the art of living your dreams. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, Kavita.
Yes, very pleased to have you here. And every week, as you know, I love to speak to women about their stories and how they kind of overcame adversity or have transformed their lives just as inspiration for others. And if you could, for our audience's sake, you just please let us know, tell us about what you're doing and how you got here and some of the challenges that you may have experienced in your life. I understand that you left a career for entrepreneurship and you also had struggles and you became sober while you were also a single mom. So a lot of challenges there. So if you could kind of give us a bit of a breakdown of how you got to be where you are today.
Okay, sure. Yeah, just reflecting on that time, those things that you mentioned all happened kind of very close together. It was due to me getting sober that I felt compelled doing something huge like that, like hitting bottom and asking for help and knowing that you have to change while it being super terrifying really is the catalyst to major transformation. And almost everyone has been through some sort of adversity and knows that feeling. For me, my son was 2 at the time, and I had abstained from my love of socializing in an excessive way sometimes while I was pregnant until he was about a year and a half. But then I started going to more and more dinner parties, again, with my son with me. I was a single mom by choice. And I started to realize that, wow, this is a bit of a slippery slope. I didn't know that I actually was my addiction, my dependence was being fueled again as I left the abstinence piece. I didn't really think before I was pregnant that I had an issue. And so by the time my son was 2.5, I was just like, wow, I don't see any good coming from this. And I don't know how to continue enjoying in quotes, because it wasn't really that much fun, to be honest. This way of life, while still being the best mom I can possibly be for my son, and not be like my mom drank. I don't want to like say if she had the full on addiction or not, but I certainly growing up didn't really like seeing her drinking all the time. So I didn't want my son to have to go through that as well. And I just had to have like a full on conversation with myself. And it was just one particular hangover, not a great one, on a work morning. I had to take him to daycare. And I reached out to somebody who I knew, who used to be a drinking friend of mine, who had gotten sober, and I didn't know what she was up to. And I remember saying, do you still have fun even when you're sober? I couldn't even imagine. I was just, so it was surreal going through that, because I never even imagined that I would never be social in that way, like again. So during all that transformative work, lots of inner work, so much going through, like why I felt depressed all the time. The inner work that I didn't really know what I was in for until it started happening. And I started to understand why I had depression for many years, and anxiety and social anxiety. And so there was a lot of outside. I did join a 12-step program, but there was a lot of outside help as well, like seeing therapists and really understanding. I mean, I had seen therapists before getting sober, but I could never seem to get the help that I thought that they could give me, because I wasn't looking at the elephant in the room.
Right.
So yeah, doing that over a couple of years, that was in 2006. By 2008, I was like loving life, feeling like a rebirth had happened.
That's amazing.
Still somewhat quiet about my sobriety. I wasn't shouting it from the rooftops, because a lot of people still to this day look at addiction through judgmental eyes, and there's still a stigma around addiction. And I knew from my experience in recovery, just from other people in recovery, saying you don't have to tell everybody. That's why it's Alcoholics Anonymous, even though I don't like the word alcoholic anymore. I don't even use that word, but you're anonymous. So you don't have to shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, I was pretty quiet about it.
Right. There's one thing that, if I could go back to what you had said, that kind of clicked in my head, is that you didn't think you had an issue, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe you want to talk about that a little bit, because I feel that people who have problems with addictions, often they don't realize they have an issue, or they maybe don't even acknowledge it, or don't know what's happening at the time. So that just kind of clicked to me in that maybe how do you actually realize at that point that you have an issue? Right.
I think if you're even asking yourself, you might.
Right.
But you're very secretive about it. Like you couldn't ever, I was in denial at the same time. So almost intuitively, I could sense that, wow, I would say I'm dependent, or I rely on that as my way to relax, but I think understanding that there are lots of little signs, especially if you're functioning, like if you can manage everything in your life, which I was, and I wasn't a daily drinker, I was a binge drinker. I would drink only on the weekends, or maybe if I drank on a weeknight, it would turn into a long night, which I had never really intended. But you can tell yourself things that's part of the addiction, is that you're lying to yourself and lying to people around you and hiding things. But there's a lot of guilt, shame, and remorse, usually the day after, because you're like, how did that happen? I didn't really intend for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But then you said that then you got out of it. So tell us about how you transformed that.
Right. So I found, again, this is not for everybody, but the 12-step program really seemed to allow me to understand how there's quite a few things at play that cause it, but how did I get around it was just doing the work of the 12 steps with other people in the program and just seeing things with completely different eyes. Like even people that aren't have any addiction issues, although I think there's probably addiction issues in many different ways, even if it's just to social media or shopping
Sure. Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
But we perceive things, we see things through our own filter based on what we've known from our past programming, conditioning, what we've lived. So you normally just see what you're conditioned to see. Two people could look at the exact same thing and see two completely different scenarios. So in that, I learned that through doing this inner work is that, wow, my thoughts are not accurate. I don't have to always take the bait of my thoughts. There's a whole massive infinite universe out there, and my tunnel vision is not necessarily even close to being what's really happening. So, and that was fascinating to me. And I started to be able to it was like a completely different person. In the very beginning, I just started doing the opposite of what I used to do. I was like, what would old Lisa do? What's new Lisa doing? And that was really helpful. That's a great way to shift the mind.
Yeah. It sounded like you had a great awareness, which is wonderful. Like you really, almost like you're talking to yourself, right? And saying old Lisa, new Lisa. So
yes.
I think that probably awareness is a key. And that's, so in terms of how, so you got sober, and how did you kind of apply that into your life moving forward? Because I know now that you're
third-time business owner.
Yeah. And what did I say? Your life and a mentor in the art of living your dreams. So how did you go from that to that?
So by the time I was, even after just 1 year of being sober, I was like, wow, I had saved so much money. I was traveling. I was there's so much more to life. So I started to feel really unhappy in my career, even though I thought I had arrived initially. Like when I got there, I was in TV, visual effects and computer animation. I was a technical director and did some work on children's television and also film. So I felt like I'd climbed the ladder to a degree in that position. But then after doing all this inner work and feeling more expansive, I was just like, I don't want to be in this little box anymore. And I started I started reading that by this point, it was 2008. I just started reading a lot on my first blog that I ever read was Escaping Cubicle Nation by Pamela Slim. And she's still really kind of one of those trailblazers when it comes to people branching out and starting their own business. So yeah, I just started, and I wanted to be with my son more. I felt like dropping him off at daycare early in the morning and then not seeing him all day and then picking him up in bath and bed. So that was scary. It was a big leap of faith and at that time, I started to be developing a bit of a faith in feeling like I used to be such a control freak. And I noticed with the transformation and growth that it's okay to take a risk now and again and just have some faith. And not everything doesn't always work out necessarily, but not bad things. Not everything's going to crumble around you either.
Yes,
so
right. Have the faith.
Yeah, yes. I can do this.
Right.
And if I can't, what's the worst thing that happens? I come back to this.
I love that question. What's the worst thing that could happen? And we need to remind ourselves all the time, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, the worst thing is that you grow when you learn. That's not a bad thing.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yes. Wonderful.
There's a great TED talk that Tim Ferriss, the author of 4 Hour Workweek, he does a TED talk, and he tells people people should actually do fear setting as opposed to goal setting. And in the fear setting, you're actually talking about, okay, like I've got this dream or I've got this goal, this desire. What is the worst thing that can happen? Like, what are all your fears? List all the cockamamie ideas. Like, maybe I'll become a bag lady. Like, I just was listening to your previous podcast. Is that really true? Is that really, how would you project that to happen?
Yeah. We talk ourselves into so many things, right? We talk ourselves out of so many things, I should say.
Yeah.
So, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
that's great. Yeah. Thanks for giving us a bit of an overview of how you overcame that. And that's just very inspiring to learn. And I think people who are going through what you go through, I think what you've said is important to know. And then you also talk about choosing courage over comfort. And we talk a lot about courage here and taking the next steps, as you said, and how we just talked about talking ourselves out of things. And so how would you say that you developed the courage to take your next steps? And what would you advise women maybe who are looking at what's the next step in my life? I can't do this because X, Y, and Z. So how did you develop the courage?
I think it was just doing a few kind of like just unconventional, maybe, like for whatever reason, maybe I have a strong intuition, but I find like the more transformation, the more growth we have, the more we can really tap into the intuition and go with what we know is probably best, even if it feels quite terrifying. Now, doing that, there's a great documentary that Brene Brown did called A Call to Courage. And she actually talks about choosing courage over comfort. And now that I've been doing this work for quite a while, I do understand why the mind wants to keep us safe. There's several reasons. Part of it is like, if you go back to the old reptilian brain, how we had to keep ourselves safe to survive. Nowadays, when we're trying to do something that feels a bit courageous, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're in any danger or that there's a threat of like a saber-toothed tiger coming to charge us. So there's that. And then there's also that whole idea of feeling safe is fine. But I really believe that because we are here on this planet and we are part of nature, like everything else in nature grows, expands, and we are here to expand. We are here to become the highest expression of ourselves. And when that little tiny flame of desire or inside, we feel like something's got to change, but we feel that fear, it's actually understanding that fear is actually, we're hitting a growth edge. And so the growth, we're going to be moving, having fear is just saying, wow, I'm about ready to grow. I'm about to step over the line from the comfort zone into the growth zone. And that's a great thing. And again, like what do you have to lose by easier said than done? Of course, our mind does want to tell us all the excuses. Like, I don't have the education. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not the right height.
Yeah. I love that because I think that fear is kind of can be the fuel to change, if you think of it that way. Right?
Exactly. Right. When you're feeling that.
If you're not feeling fear, then I don't think you're growing. Like, you're just complacent. And that's what happened to me. I was in this comfortable position, comfortable career, and it was not exciting. And then that happens to so many of us. And you were talking about that little voice. And if you don't listen to that little voice, it was a reason that comes out, because that little voice is there for you to think about what your possibilities are and to face those fears. And then if you face them, and then there's another fear that comes up, and that you grow more and more. Right. So
exactly. Yeah. And even if you don't know exactly what you're meant to do, or like so many people are like, oh, I know I need to find my purpose, or I don't even know what that is. I don't know how to do that. That's okay. You don't have to. It's more about just doing something really small, like something different that's really small. And it's almost like breadcrumbs. Once you do one thing that's a little bit out of the ordinary from your normal life. I mean, I like the way Bob Proctor phrases it, something to the degree of, imagine you're looking at your life on a movie screen. Are you in the audience just watching it, or are you actually the writer and the director and even the actor in it? Like,
yes,
what would you prefer? And that's what I tell my clients, even when they're just visioning or visualizing where they might like to be.
Yeah.
Being the director of your show and not letting everything happening around you and feeling like circumstances are sort of dictating the direction that you're going.
I love that. Being the director of your show.
Yeah.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah. It's actually, the more you do it, the more exciting it is.
Yes.
It's like, wow, what do I get to do next?
Yeah, because sometimes we just sit back and watch and let things happen to us. And it's like, well, why are we doing that? Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
It's take charge. If you really want something, then take charge and do it. And all these obstacles that you think they're perceived, it could be real. Obviously, there's some obstacles that are real, but a lot of them are inner that we create in our minds. So that's great. I love that.
It's true.
Yes.
A lot of people will feel that they're in the comfort zone, but they know they need to change. They're not sure like what that looks like.
Yeah.
My clients, sometimes they might say, well, that might be easy for you or someone else, but you don't understand my scenario. And the thing is, you don't have to think about the how it's going to happen.
Yes.
All you need to do is make the decision. As soon as you make the decision, all the resources or whatever kind of shows up, because you start to just be like, wow, I just made a decision on something pretty big. That means I'm doing it. And however that comes about, it will work itself out. Everything always shows up as it needs to.
Yes.
So just make the decision. Don't worry about the how.
Yeah, exactly. I want to get back to that because that's all about the energy. But I wanted to also tap into what you talked about a little bit before about visioning. And I know that you were taught by Mike Dooley. You learned from him and his work on visioning and infinite possibilities. So can you tell us a little bit about his teachings and the importance of visualizing, and how does that work and how has that helped you? Yes,
sure. His work really started to resonate with me a few years ago when I had come to, so the very first business, I was a children's yoga and art teacher, and I loved it because my son was involved and it was just great. He was 5 at the time, and 5 to 9 or 10. And then I got more into being a virtual assistant and helping other businesses, and got certified as a virtual COO or online business manager. But by 2019, and I was listening to Mike Dooley quite a bit, everything he was saying was just resonating so much. And I was like, I would really like to teach this sort of stuff. So that's how I transitioned into this most current iteration of being a success coach with a focus on mindset and manifesting. And his claim to fame, his 3 words are thoughts become things. He says that all the time. And it really is. If you see it in your mind, you can bring it into physical form. It's not, I thought about this thing and now I'm having it, like a yacht or whatever it is that some people might like, if it's material things or even experiential things. But some little things can be easy. Like, I'm thinking I'd like to have a drink of water. Next thing you know, you got a water in your hand. Like, it can be as simple as that. But yeah, he starts off with the thoughts. And then we start to look at beliefs, like underlying beliefs. If you look at your end results right now, like if you look around your room, your house or your environment, your vocation, everything that's happening in your present is all come into form based on all past thoughts and beliefs. Yeah. So those beliefs are really important. And sometimes you don't know that there might be some underlying limiting beliefs, but your emotions will definitely shine a spotlight on that. If, again, looking at the same scenario and there's 2 different people that see it from 2 different views through different lenses, you'll understand what their beliefs are. you'll be able to say, oh, I see why this person is upset about this because they've got some underlying beliefs, or why this person feels not fazed about it at all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the thoughts, the emotions, the beliefs, and then action. You really have to take action. That's so important. A part of all of this, having the idea is one thing, and visioning and visualizing, but taking action. And again, I said it before, you don't have to know the how this is all going to play out. Just take baby steps. It's almost like throwing darts at the dartboard. We can't dictate how things are going to play out, but you can just expect, if you keep taking baby action steps, that your dream will eventually come into physical form, maybe, or even better, which is a lot of the case, because we can't have a projection like that.
Right.
Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
That resonates with me so much because, I mean, the thoughts become things. I actually just did a little podcast on that topic because I don't know if you've listened to Abraham Hicks.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes, of course, right. So that's all around the law of attraction, right? Mm-hmm. And like you said, your thoughts, you can have a positive thought, and the positive thought then gains momentum, and it's out into the universe. And then, or a negative thought is the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's similar around that. And and I talk about visualization as well. And if you visualize, for example, the inner mentor is you 20 years from now, let's say, and just doing that creates thoughts which you ultimately don't even realize, but things come to you, things happen that will lead you to that mentor or that vision of yourself.
That's right.
So I totally believe that. I also believe in the energy which surrounds us all, right? And detaching yourself from the outcome, because if you're thinking these thoughts and you're in a high energy state where you resonate at that, you're not thinking negative thoughts, then those things manifest uncannily. And I'm sure that's happened to you, right?
Exactly.
So a lot of these concepts, I know that people kind of they may think that's woo-woo or whatever, but how is this kind of energy concept? How do you explain it, and how does this work, and how do you explain it to your clients, or how does it manifest in your life?
Right. Okay. So one of the things I love doing with my clients is actually doing like a physical exercise and showing how our thoughts are energy, because our thoughts emit energy, and we are all energy, and energy transmutes into different things. Like even when you just plant seeds in the soil, when they're in the right environment, before you know it, you're going to have roots and seedlings coming up. And that's similar to the way we are with our own thoughts, is we're planting the seeds. And even if we don't see anything initially, that doesn't mean it's not happening under the soil. And a lot of the time we can be impatient or think like, oh, it's not happening, because we're relying on our 5 physical senses.
Yes.
But we are all energy. The same energy that's coursing through the cosmos is what's coursing through every one of us, and animals and nature. And so to me, that's not necessarily woo-woo too much. And the cool exercise that I do is where we think positively, you can actually see how expansive it is. And then when you're thinking negatively, it's very restrictive, contracting, and a lower frequency. And when Abraham Hicks or Bob Proctor or lots of people who talk about manifesting and the law of attraction, it's all about what frequency you're on.
Yes.
And being in harmony with that other thing that you want to attract. So basically, you just want to be the energy that you want to attract. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times you can even ask yourself, like you were talking about the future mentor 20 years from now, or even if someone is thinking about reinventing themselves, they could say to themselves, what is future 6-figure Lisa? What would she act? How would she act in this? How would she behave in this particular scenario? What decision would she make? So make your decisions based on where you want to be, not on where you are right now.
It's a guide, right? It's a guide. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And trusting.
We often, sorry to interrupt, but we often look at external mentors like other people.
Yeah.
And then that's fine. But other people don't really know your makeup, your circumstances, what's in your thoughts. But if you have yourself as your mentor that you think of kind of like the ultimate person you want to be or become, or what surrounds you. And if you put that, I just find that's very, very powerful. Because it just like you said, it plants a seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't know where that seed is going to grow. You don't really have control over it. And I think that's sometimes what people, like you said, become impatient because they don't see the fruits of that planting the seed right away. And it's like, well, that didn't work, or I asked for this, but it didn't manifest right away.
Trust the process.
Yes, exactly.
It's about trusting the process, having that faith, and just acting as if a lot of the time, like, I know this is coming, it's on its way, and continually behaving like that future scenario yourself, or what you would be doing in that scenario. And too many people give up. They could be like, there's a great little cartoon drawing that I have in one of my presentations where there's a guy underground, like he's in mining for diamonds with a pickaxe. And he's like this close to like the other side, a huge windfall. We could be 3 feet from gold or diamonds and turn around.
Yes.
Like just give up and listen to those limiting thoughts. It's a challenge to overcome those because they're always there. They're always there.
So how do we? What are some practical ways that we, especially obviously that my audience is women midlife, and even though we have so much to offer, like we have lived a life of we have so many experiences, so many strengths, but we still have these things that come in our head that we can't do this, can't do that. So how do we practically?
It's a practice. First, it's just becoming aware. Self-awareness is key. And if you recognize one of those not so helpful thoughts coming in, you can just say, not useful, not helping. It's one thing to have affirmations posted all around your mirror and on the fridge and here and there. But if you're not aligned or reconciled with that, it takes more practice. And that's the underlying belief piece. One thing that's really important, I'm sure you've heard of this before, but when it comes to talking to ourselves, sometimes we say things to ourselves, either out loud or in our minds, in our head, that we would never say to a good friend, to a child. So like being self-aware, and like when those self-doubt comes up and we say those things, like, would you really say that to a child? Would you, and try and go back to the way we were when we were a child. Like the great analogy is when we first learned to walk. It's not like we took a few steps, fell down and said, darn, that didn't work.
Yeah.
We just kept going because that was our nature. It's our nature. But over decades of conditioning, and programming that just wasn't correct. And the ego really is, when it does that, it's just misguided self-love. Again, trying to keep us safe. It doesn't mean it's actually.
Yeah. Abraham Hicks talks about that a lot when she talks about children and how we say, no, don't do that. Don't jump in the puddle. It's
right.
Like, why not? And that's what the thing is when you think about what you did as a child and what you were really passionate about and what brought you joy, and you could try to bring that into your life now. That's just think
Very
about
good point.
what made you happy back then. How can we bring that passion back into our lives? Maybe not jumping in puddles, but what's another kind of, that's a metaphor, but how can we jump in puddles every day, right? And really wake up
Exactly.
exuberant and happy. And it's really about, and I also, obviously, the three tenets, power, purpose, play, the third one is play. And that really, to me, means having that passion, but also taking care of yourself, right? And you mentioned that a little bit. And how do we get to this level of awareness? I think for me, it's for a lot of my guests that I've spoken to, it's really about just being with yourself and being rather than doing all the time. And practices like meditation and journaling and just being present and taking time for yourself. What are some of the other things that you think are important for self-care? Yes, absolutely.
Gratitude, very big in my world. It's part of the journaling in the morning, yoga, of course, and breath work, which is kind of the same to a degree as meditation. Yeah, that quiet time, that really getting to know who we are. It's at first, I mean, I think as we're getting older, it actually becomes something that we can look forward to. Like it, and the play piece, when we're in joy, when we're in a place of just happy in the moment. I have this program called Say Hello to Your Future Self, and we keep talking about our future self, but being content and feeling joy in the moment is really what it's all about. And recognizing that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be in this moment. So when things are going great, we're meant to be in that moment. And when things aren't so feeling so great, especially the way COVID, a lot of people have been able to reframe COVID, like this is not happening to me, this is happening for me. It's just starting to understand how to be able to reframe things. And I think that quiet time for sure is probably the most important.
Right. I think this last almost 2 years now has really allowed people to think about what they really want moving forward and reevaluate what their changing values are. How do they want to structure their lives almost? Like, do they have to go back to what was happening? I mean, like you said, like, do we have to be traveling 2 hours a day, commuting? Or I find that people have really are rethinking their lives. I don't know if you've seen that with your clients.
Oh yeah. It's huge. It's such a good thing. Like I think we're, as a collective, growing. There's still a lot of unknown around the pandemic and how it's all going to play out, and there's still a lot of divisiveness, but it's still happening for the greater good. It's all happening, and I'm so glad. Like I'm just really happy to see and to be like, I wonder how this is all going to play out. I wonder what the documentaries are going to be coming out about this in like 10 years or
it's also interesting because I think people now are getting back into meeting each other and seeing each other. And I think there's a whole level of like, oh my God, I'm getting back into the world. And how is this kind of a little bit of anxiety perhaps, and coming back into the world and meeting people in person, right?
But also respecting yourself in a different way than you may have beforehand. Like those boundaries, like hanging on to them. Like if you lost a few relationships or gave up a few relationships, just because we're coming back together doesn't necessarily mean that you need to resume and pick up where you left off. And I think giving yourself permission to just respect and listening to your own needs. And I think hopefully people are doing that.
Yes. And also what's important to you, what's most important to you, and that focusing on that, right? So
exactly.
Well, so many interesting topics. I feel like we could talk for a long time.
Totally.
Yes. So tell us what you're doing right now in terms of any initiatives or anything that's going on that you are providing, and where we can find you and all that good stuff.
Okay, sure. I'm really active on Instagram. That's my platform of choice. Although Facebook, I'm still on Facebook as well. But the initiatives I'm working on right now are I'm offering a masterclass called I Am Magnetic. and we go deeper into these things that we've been talking about, like mindset and manifesting. It's a free masterclass. I'm sure it'll be passed by the time you put this out there.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my biggest things that I love offering at this time of year into January, so from like November, December, January, are vision board workshops. So giving people the gift of time to reflect on where they're at right now, and then also sort of prepare in their mind for where they might want to be. And they're digital vision boards. They're not the old school, like magazines on poster board. So letting people really listen to that inner voice when they feel like they've got that like tug that they're meant for more. And it could be in any part of your life, relationship, home environment, business or career, finances, spirituality, that sort of thing. And just setting yourself up for almost like having a blueprint or like a map, a compass to shoot for in the year ahead or years ahead. They can be very lofty goals. Personally, I think if you've got the desire and it's come up, then that means it's possible for you, because everything that we desire already exists in the form of potential.
Yeah. Going back to the energy, right?
Yeah. And not everybody has the same dream. Not everybody wants materialistic things, or not everybody is unique. And I truly, when I see someone's vision board, it's almost like a window to their soul. It's like, this is your unique for you right now. That is what you should be aiming for. I know I shouldn't say should, but could be aiming for, and not keeping yourself down, like trusting that if you had this desire, then it's calling you.
Yeah. I love that everything that you desire exists. It's so true. And it's so important to write, like to actually have a physical manifestation of it, or like to actually write it down, because it can be in your thoughts. And if you don't either put it in a vision board like you do, or write it down, or have affirmations, or I think it doesn't become as real for you. And if you can hang on to, like, if you have a vision board or something that you can look at, it's like, okay, it forms those kind of neurons that actually create that to happen. It's actually scientifically proven that actually is.
Exactly.
Yes.
It reinforces. In the beginning, you may not have believed it, but if you've had that thing on your vision board for a long time, and you start actually doing a few things, like I have on my vision board right now, high tea at the Ritz in London. So that seems kind of, I don't know when I'm going to be able to travel there, whatever. But I've been on their website, looking at how much it costs, looking at flights, putting dates in my calendar as to when I want to book the flight, like that. Fantastic. Just doing those little baby steps.
Yeah. And exactly. Putting in your calendar. That's let's plan this.
That's right.
Like it's not something, if you really want to do it, it will happen. Yeah.
You just start acting like, even if you're in a business and you need help, or you feel like, I definitely am going to want to hire a virtual assistant at some time, you can put it in the calendar, even just to, in a month from now, I'm going to start researching VAs, so that in 6 months from now, I'll have some reference material or people that I can reach out to.
Yes, absolutely. So true. I really love this conversation, because it resonates with everything that I do and I believe. And I think what you're offering is fantastic in terms of the vision board and all your other offerings. So I really appreciate all your insights. And we'll have all your links and everything that you're offering in our show notes, so people can reach out to you if they're interested. And I mean, any other thoughts you might want to end up with there?
I just want to say thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor, because I love what you do. And I think it's just really important for more and more women to just know how powerful they truly are, like, and to learn how to trust that inner voice, and ask for help. It's okay to ask for help, and follow those who have gone before you, and look to mentors, look to coaches, invest it's an investment in your best asset, which is you. Yeah,
absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for sharing your story about your sobriety as well. That's very important. It's very important messages for people to learn learn from. And I know that's not easy to talk about probably, but I appreciate the candidness in that. And
yeah, my pleasure.
Yes.
That I just not recently, but a few years ago kind of came out of the closet about it. I'm 15 years sober now. So
congratulations.
But anybody who's listening to this, if they do want to reach out to me privately for that, I'm always happy to help as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again, Lisa. I really appreciate it. And it was lovely to speak with you.
Thank you, Kavita.
It was such a pleasure to interview Lisa Kelly and learn about her struggles and how she became sober and the courage to not only transform herself, but to help inspire others to do the same. We can all learn from Lisa's experience on the importance of harnessing our true infinite potential. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, there is still a stigma around addiction. If you're asking yourself if you have an issue, you might, and there should be no shame or guilt in seeking help. 2, have the faith that when having the courage to transform, not everything will crumble around you. Ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? 3, the more transformation, the more growth we have, the more we can really tap into intuition and go with what is probably best, even if it feels quite terrifying. 4, because we are here on this planet and we are part of nature, like everything else in nature, it grows and expands. We are here to expand. We are here to become the highest expression of ourselves. 5, understand that when we feel fear, we are hitting a growth edge. Having fear is just like saying, wow, I'm about ready to grow. I'm about ready to step over the line from the comfort zone to the growth zone. 6, be the director of your own show and not just let everything happen around you. Don't let circumstances dictate the direction you are going. 7, you don't have to think about the how of how it's going to happen. All you need to do is make the decision. As soon as you make the decision, all the resources show up. Everything always shows up as it needs to. 8, thoughts become things. If you see it in your mind, you can bring it into physical form. Everything in your present has come into existence based on your past thoughts and beliefs. 9, we can't predict how things are going to work out. But if you take baby steps, you can expect that your dream will manifest into physical form or even better. 10, make your decisions based on where you want to be, not on where you are right now. Continually behave like that future scenario is true. We could be 3 feet from diamonds, and yet we turn around when we listen to those limiting thoughts. Thank you so much for being here. You could be in many places, so we so appreciate you taking time for yourself, for your own personal growth. This is such an exciting time for us here at Power Purpose Play because our signature course, It's My Time Now, How to Rediscover Yourself in Midlife, is launched. I reinvented myself after 50, and I'm giving you the exact framework and process I use to get where I am today. It is about finding yourself again, and I am your guide on this incredible journey. Our independent learning course is open now, and we are taking registration in the links below. You can access our special Black Friday offer as well in the information below. Our group coaching will begin in the new year, but you can also have me as your personal coach, guiding you through the process of rediscovery in private one-on-one coaching sessions. As Lisa so rightly said, be the director of your own show and make your decisions based on where you want to be, not on where you are right now. If you're wondering what's next in your life, I know I can help you figure that out. Till next week, my friend, in love and in light, take care.